All right, let's talk about something that's both fascinating and, let's be honest, kind of confusing. The fourth dimension. It's a term you hear everywhere, in science, in sci-fi, in spirituality, but what does it actually mean?
Okay, so let's just dive right in. To even begin to get our heads around something like a fourth dimension, we have to start with the limits of our own perception. You and I, we live in three spatial dimensions. There's length, there's width, and there's height. It feels pretty complete, doesn't it? But how can we be sure that's the full picture?
This idea comes from a brilliant little book from 1884 called Flatland. Just imagine for a second that you're a 2D square living on a flat plane. Now, what would happen if a 3D sphere passed through your world? Well, you wouldn't see a sphere. You'd just see a circle that magically appears out of nowhere, gets bigger and bigger, and then shrinks and vanishes. The very concept of up or down would be, well, completely alien to you.
And that little story, it perfectly frames our challenge, right? If a two-dimensional being can't possibly perceive the third dimension, how could we, as three-dimensional beings, ever hope to perceive a fourth? To explore this, we're going to look at three completely different maps that humanity has created to try and navigate this idea. We'll start with the one you're already living in.
So where do we start? Well, let's begin with our first map, the scientific lens. This is the most widely accepted definition of the fourth dimension, and it comes from a truly revolutionary idea by Albert Einstein that completely flipped our understanding of the universe on its head.
Now here's the mind-bending part. Einstein showed that space and time aren't these separate things we thought they were. Nope, they're actually woven together into a single fabric called space-time. Every single event that happens has coordinates in space, sure, but it also has a coordinate in time. So get this, you're not just a 3D object sitting there. You are this very second a four-dimensional being on a journey through space-time.
This quote just shows how radical this idea really is. In Einstein's universe, time isn't just this simple one-way street. It's a dimension. And from that higher perspective, the past, the present, and the future, they all essentially coexist in one big block of space-time.
So what's the big difference here? It all comes down to perception. A rock just exists. It follows its path through space-time. But our consciousness, our human awareness, lets us experience that path. We have memories of the past, and we can think about the future. That very awareness of our own journey through time is what separates us from a simple 3D object. It's what makes our experience of reality, at its core, four-dimensional.
All right, so that's the science map. Now let's switch gears and look at our second map. We're moving away from the scientific and into the conceptual, an idea that really took root in mathematics and, of course, got super popular in science fiction. The fourth dimension as another direction in space.
So, for a minute, just forget about time. This model asks a different question. What if there was another direction you could move in? One that's completely perpendicular to up, down, left, right, and forward, backward. I know visualizing this is famously tough, but let's try to build the 4D version of a cube. You might have heard of it. It's called a tesseract.
You can see the pattern here, right? A point moves and you get a line. A line moves at a right angle to itself and boom, you've got a square. A square moves at a right angle to itself and you get a cube. So logically, the next step is to move the whole cube at a right angle to itself, and that's where our poor 3D brains just hit a brick wall. We literally can't picture that new direction.
Yeah, trying to visualize that fourth spatial axis, it's a total mental trap. It's like asking that square from Flatland to imagine up. But don't worry, there's a much more intuitive way to wrap your head around this.
This, right here, is the breakthrough. Just forget trying to picture another direction. Instead, think of dimensions as just features or pieces of data. I mean, a point in 2D space, that's just two numbers, x and y. A 3D point, you just add a z. Following that exact same logic, a 5-dimensional point isn't some impossible shape. It's just an object defined by 5 different values. It could be x, y, z, temperature, and price. Suddenly thinking in, I don't know, thousands of dimensions, it's not so crazy anymore.
All right, we've covered science and math. For our final map, we're going to leave the physical world behind entirely and enter the metaphysical. This is the idea that dimensions aren't places or directions at all, but are actually different states of being or levels of consciousness. I love this analogy. It suggests that people can be, vibrating at different frequencies while living in the exact same physical world, but experiencing a completely different reality. You could have two people living in the same city, but the person on the 3D floor sees a world of scarcity and conflict, while someone on the 5D floor experiences unity and love. Same building, totally different view. So let's break this down. In this spiritual framework, you can think of 3D as our default setting. It's our baseline material reality, often driven by logic, the five senses, and the ego. And way over on the other side, you've got 5D, which is a state of unity, harmony, and unconditional love. And the fourth dimension? Well, that's the crucial bridge between them. It's seen as the awakening phase, where your intuition starts to take over, and reality itself begins to feel a lot more fluid, almost dreamlike.
So what does that actually feel like in practice? Well, according to this view, there are some pretty tangible signs. Have you ever been so absorbed in something you love that hours feel like minutes? That's a 4D experience. Or maybe you've noticed those meaningful coincidences popping up more often, or found that old relationships that don't serve you anymore are just naturally fading away. These are all considered signs that your inner world is beginning to reshape your outer reality.
Okay, so we have space-time from physics, we have conceptual tesseracts from math, and we have spiritual states of being. 3 completely different maps for the exact same term, the fourth dimension. So, what gives? Are any of them actually real? What does all this tell us?
And here's the thing. What becomes super clear is that the fourth dimension isn't one single concrete thing you can, point at. It's a powerful and incredibly flexible concept. It's a tool we've developed. It's the name we give to whatever lies just beyond the edges of our everyday perception.
And that is the common thread, isn't it? It doesn't matter if you're a physicist, a mathematician, or a mystic. The fourth dimension is our human attempt to map the vast territories that lie just beyond our 5 senses. It's a concept that's constantly pushing us to expand our definition of reality itself.
And that leaves us with one final thought. For you. We've explored 3 very different maps of reality: the scientific, the conceptual, and the spiritual. And you know what? None of them is necessarily more right than the others. They're just tools for understanding. So take a second and look at the world around you. Which map are you using? And, maybe more importantly, what would you see if you tried using a different one?